Are we on? Lekker morning, everybody. Long time no see. Fortunately for me. So, what's the date today? 7th. The 7th. Okay, so you've had your Christmas, and you've had your New Year, and you've had your time off. Welcome to the new guys that have never seen me before. I know it's a shock. You're expecting a little grey oak with a crimpoline suit and a big hat. I know. And then this hat comes out and you're like, what time's the pastor get you? Well, I've got bad news for you. I'm him, bro. Right, so it could be good news, but most of the times I see it as bad news, but it's good news. Because what you already should be able to deduce just by the way that I look is that I might know a thing or two about your problem. Because I look very similar to the guys that are on the program, you know. I just shave and get dressed, and I can dress myself already. Imagine. So, and I know how to use a knife and fork, and I know that it's bad manners to sit and fart and these types of things at the table, and I know that, you know, it's better to, when you use the toilet, go in the toilet and not on the floor. And if I do, to clean it up after me, you know, basic things that many of you are still struggling with. Because, you know, the only way I can figure it out is that someone didn't teach you that these are acceptable norms and standards for human behavior, right? So, that being said, I pretty much have gone through, and this is for the benefit of guys that haven't met me yet, have gone through what you're going through now multiple times in my life. And the reason that I had to go through it multiple times in my life is because I was too interested in what was going on in my own brain rather than listening to someone who at that point, when I was young like you, had a better plan and a better idea for life. And had I followed his instruction, I would have gotten to a result, a positive result, far earlier. But because I didn't listen the first time and I didn't listen the second time, I thought I was listening, but I wasn't. I was trying to manipulate what I was hearing into my own thinking. And by trying to manipulate what I was hearing into my own thinking, I missed the boat numerous times. All right? And it cost me 10 years of my life. 10 years of my life. All right? Added to the other 10 years, which was active addiction. For those of you that don't know, I was addicted to crack cocaine as my drug of choice, but I was what they call a poly addict. In other words, whatever's going, that's what I'm on. Whatever I can get my hands on, that's what I'm on. If I've got money, I'm going to the rocks. Or even the coke, if I can't. Or if I don't want to. Or if I don't feel like smoking rocks, which happened 0 times. But, you know, later on in my life, as many of you are thinking right now, I thought that if I don't smoke rocks, but I drop pills and I smoke weed and I have a couple dorps and I chop a line or two, that's okay. Because it's not rocks. And I know many of you still think like that in your terms of your drug of choice. And that is bad thinking. But the point being this is that that type of thinking retarded my progress for a decade. You know, where I thought, I'll just change this aspect of my life and then everything will be okay. Because in my mind and in the minds of many people I've come across over the years, you must understand, I've preached this message to over 4,000 people just at this center over a space of, it's now the 17th year. So, and I keep seeing the same faces coming back, and the same faces still seem to struggle with the concept that in order to recover is going to require complete surrender. Complete surrender. In other words, complete surrender to your way of thinking and complete surrender to a completely new and foreign lifestyle that you have never experienced and don't know, which is terrifying. They say that the thing that is the most terrifying for human beings is change. Change is the thing we fear the most. And I can tell you, as a white South African, when the ANC first took over South Africa, it was a terrifying prospect because we didn't know what that change was going to look like. You know what I mean? Now we're 30 years in. It's not so lacquer at the moment, but it will get better. It will definitely get better. But everything we feared about the change, well, let me say this, not everything, but the vast majority of things that we feared about the change never happened. Never happened, bro. And so we found that to a large extent, what people said would be impossible has been possible. We can live together. We can work together. We can do it. So the point is not the politics. The point is that sometimes fearing change, the only thing that is the problem is the fear itself, is what I want to say to you. And you need to try and disregard that fear if you want to progress in your life. You need to start coming to a mindset of understanding that as much as change is traumatic, change is very often necessary in order to achieve progress. We're sitting in a similar situation now where people, please get me some anti-fly brew. We're sitting in a situation now where people are terrified of change because they don't know what will come after the current dispensation. And it's the same as you. You're terrified of going into this new life because you don't know what it looks like. You don't know what it feels like. You don't know if you can manage at it. You don't know if you can move forward in this new system of thinking, in this new way of life. And so many people hang on to the old because it's comfortable. As much as it's uncomfortable, it's comfortable, if you understand what I'm saying. You become comfortable in your discomfort, okay? And so stepping out of that zone becomes a daunting task, bro, an absolutely daunting task, because you've got to travel along a road that is unknown. And for us, like, this is why I enjoy some of the hobbies that I participate in, because those hobbies speak to the same thing. They speak to adventure. Shot, man. Okay, well, enough to just deal with these eggs quickly. Aha, now you're running, right? Because of the weapons of mass destruction. But it's adventure, bud. It's an adventure. And so, we have grown accustomed in the hobbies that I do to go and investigate and look at different things that we don't normally go down. We go down the road less traveled in order to reach a destination never seen or seen by very few. And particularly not seen by ourselves, ever. Now, that destination for you would obviously be sobriety. A life where you can get up in the morning and not have to run around to feed this constant, never-ending lust for your drug of choice. Imagine what a life like that looks like. How would you keep yourself busy in the day if you don't have to run after drugs all day? Have you asked yourself that question? How are you going to fill the vacuum? What's funny there at the back? Tashil? All I'm hearing is donkey hack. I saw you laughing and catching a laugh there. Drawing pictures there. Was it a self-portrait? Because that would have been pretty funny. So, you know what, Brew? This is something that I'm saying. So just on a small note like that, right? We are listening to what's going on in our own mind instead of concentrating for a very short period of time. I take up 45 minutes, sometimes an hour and a half of your time here in the morning, right? But generally around an hour. All you need to do, I don't care what you do the rest of the day, but let me tell you something. You need to concentrate here, because it's here where you're going to get the jewels that you need to fill your crown. And everybody wants to be a king. Everybody. Every man that I've ever met wants to be a king. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be a ruler of a nation. But you want to at least be a ruler of your own destiny, and you want to be the ruler of your own household, and you want to be the ruler of your own financial well-being, in order that you can achieve the things that you dreamed of achieving as a child. No one here, not one person sitting here, and I can say this unequivocally and with vigor, not one person here, when they were in grade school, nursery school, being looked after by gogo, whatever, wherever you grew up as a small child and went into your first day of school, and the teacher said to you, what is your dream? What do you want to be? You said, I want to be a drug addict, and I can't wait to go to rehab for the first time. Anybody? Is there anyone here? No. Right? And this is why I fight with people here often about their plans. My plan is this, my plan is that. How many plans have you had in your life? And how many of those plans have led you to where you thought you were going to go? And I can tell you that very few. Because no matter what plans you had, you're here with me right now. You're here with me. So the plans you had, although the dreams that formulated those plans were supposed to take you down a certain road to get to a certain destination, somewhere along that road, and I'm going to use a lekker South African word here, you were hijacked. You were hijacked. And what was taken from you? Your dreams were taken from you, and your plans were scuppered right there. And you were taken down a different road. But the problem is the road you were taken down is a very similar road to a psychological disorder that they call the Stockholm Syndrome, where you start identifying and supporting and even assisting your hostage takers to continue down the path that they're going, even at the expense of your life, your dreams, your plans, and everything you are hoping for going forward. Am I wrong? Because none of you, I can tell you now, none of you, from the guy sitting here preaching to you, or giving you a lesson, or teaching you, to the oak that came in 20 minutes ago, whatever the case may be, not one of us, if given a choice, a proper choice, would want to be here today. Every one of us would rather be either at the coast sun tanning by the beach, or at work earning a living, or waiting to go to our daughter's recital at school tonight, or spending our time with our kids during the course of today if we're on holiday, or even having had a Christmas with our kids and our families, or a New Year with our kids and our families. No one in the world would rather choose to either be here or be in prison or be living, as I always say, and you guys will get to hear, under a bridge or in a drain pipe. No one, what? But yet here we are, all of us. And we have to be honest with ourselves. This is the first key to open the first door to your recovery and rehabilitation, is honesty. And primarily, number one, you have to be honest with yourself. Now what that means is that you have to start looking at how you got here. Not my parents sent people to come and fetch me. That's not how you got here, bro. That was the mode of transport, or the intervention as we call it. How you got here are the decisions and choices that you've made through your life that got you to a place where your parents, your wife, your loved ones had no other alternative but to intervene in this process of destruction that you have been engaged in, many of you for decades, some of you coming up to a decade. And you have to start being honest and looking at those decisions and looking at those choices and then determining how and why you made those choices and decisions. Generally speaking, I read a brilliant article this morning. Brilliant article that speaks about how we make the choices that take us to certain places because we are completely trapped in what they call survival mode. And the guy was speaking specifically to men. And he was speaking specifically about himself. And he says this, he says, you know, I'm 52 years old, he says. Just a guy on Facebook, right? But he's all of us, but when you read what he writes there, he's all of us. I should have saved it for you guys and read it to you, but it was long. And he says, I've worked my whole life. My kids are about to finish school. I'm earning money. My bills are always paid. But yet I can never fall asleep at night because I worry all the time. And he says that's because from a very early age, with the struggles that he had to go through in life to establish himself, that worry was always there. What happens if they take my house? What happens if they repossess my car? What happens if I can't feed my kids? What happens if I can't pay their school fees? What happens if my wife then isn't happy with the way I provide and leaves me? What happens? These fears that are rolling through his head all the time, even though over a period of 30 years have proven to be just that, only fears. He has always managed to provide for his kids. He's always paid his school fees. He's always paid his rent or bond in time. He's always paid his car on time. He's always gone to work. But yet the fear does not leave. And he says, when do we lose that fear? And the reality is that you probably, in all likelihood, will not lose that fear. The only hope that we have is to look at an outside source to help us contend with fear. But at the same time, this is a person who has lived his life correctly. What is the difference between the way you living your lives and what I keep terming as the correct way of living your life? What is incorrect about the way you live your life? Many people, I myself have said it, if I choose to be an addict, I don't know how you choose to be an addict, because addiction already speaks to removal of choice. All right? But let's then rather rephrase it. If I choose to be a substance abuser, and that is how I want to live my life, I make that choice. I want to take drugs. I like being high. I like having all the trappings of substance abuse. In other words, I get up when I want, I go make my plan, I score my drugs, I take my drugs, I do my thing. What is incorrect about that? Why is that wrong? I would ask. But what's wrong about those choices? Well, I don't know. How is it selfish? Okay, currently, right? But let's say you live on your own, wherever you live. All right? Let's say you don't have family, for argument's sake. And you live wherever you live. And you pay for wherever you live. Or you live in a park. And you take your drugs, you go beg for your money. How can I say that's an incorrect way of living? That's a wrong way of living. What gives me the audacity or arrogance of making that statement? I saw a movie. I can't remember what movie it was. Con Air. Have you watched Con Air, right? And that completely crazy guy, right, who ends up playing in the little park with that little girl. Steve Buscemi plays the part. And he says to Nicolas Cage on the airplane, he says to him, some people would say that sitting in an office, working for 30 years, making someone else rich, only to die, is insanity. It's open for debate, gents. Right? But I don't believe either way, the way I previously described, or that. That was a fear of mine. I watched my mother live that life. She worked for a legal firm for 30-something years. But she raised my brother and my sister. Not so much me, I was raised by my grandparents. But she raised my brother and sister, and then went into retirement, and 2 years after going into retirement, gone. Boom. Got sick, croaked. Now, what was the point? Well, I'll give it to you. She may have sat in an office for 30 years doing her job, but she had the joy and pleasure of watching how she was able to provide us with a better future, provide us with food, provide us with an education, provide us with Christmas presents, provide us with Sunday lunches, provide us with all the things, clothing that we as kids received. And so I would say that that is a life well lived. Because, and this was her word, this was her favorite word. And I kicked up against it, and I went the route all of you went, only to find out that my way was completely deluded and wrong. My mindset was incorrect, because her words that she used all the time is this: I chose to have children, therefore I have a responsibility to those children. Okay, I'm going to go a bit further with responsibility before I get to the next word, right? What country do you live in? I had an argument, not an argument, I had an opinion on this with people this weekend. People that I was with this weekend like to skip toll gates. I do from time to time. I do. You know what I mean? Especially on a motorcycle. You just hug the car in front of you and you're through, right? But over a period of years, I've started feeling guilty about it. Because I don't know if you guys driven on the N3 or the N1 or the N4 or any one of these highways, these toll roads. Have you guys driven on them? Have you seen the condition of those roads? Condition is great. Condition is number one, bro. 3 lanes. Almost perfect. If you drive to Durban, you've pretty much, there's places where they repair the road always, which is, you just got to accept that. They've got to fix the road. That's where your toll gate money is going, is to keep that road in good condition so that you can get from Johannesburg to Durban in your motor vehicle safely in a very short space of time. Generally speaking now, it takes you 5.5 hours to get to Durban if you drive at 120 to 140 on the highway. All right? You'll get there 5.5 to Durban itself. I'm not now talking Ballito, Umhlanga, or Port Shepstone. I'm talking Durban Central. It'll take you 5.5 hours. When I was a kid, that was a 2-lane road. Well, everything that came with it, right? A trip to Durban was no less than 8 hours. No less than 8 hours. So, what have the toll gates done? They've improved our infrastructure so that we can limit our time traveling in order that we can have more time enjoying ourselves or doing business or whatever we're going to do in Durban if we go to Durban from Joburg, right? And how do they maintain those roads? To keep them like that for us? Toll gates, what? Right? Now people will say, I'll bring the argument about fuel levies and all of that. All right? Fair enough, I get it. But right there's an active way, and they are expensive. Now people will make the argument with me, yeah, but we're on bikes, we should pay less than cars. Absolutely, I agree. I 100% agree. But that doesn't mean that because that's how the law works, or that's how the rules work, that you don't pay the toll gate. Because you have a responsibility to pay your share to fix the roads. And when you consider it takes 2 million rand to build a single lane of tar for 1 kilometer. 2 million rand, what? All right? A proper road that's going to take trucks and all of that, right? And that you've got 700 or 650 kilometers of double lane all the way down there, plus emergency medical services, plus everything that comes with that, right? You've got to understand what kind of money it takes to maintain that road. And do they make a profit? Absolutely. Absolutely, they do, you know? And what do they do with that profit? I have no idea. That's not my problem. All I know is when I get to that toll gate, from there where I pay that toll gate to the next toll gate, I'm paying for the maintenance of that road so that I can travel safely. In other words, I have a responsibility. Do you live in South Africa? Enjoying the sunshine? Enjoying the water that we drink from the rain? It's all from God. But we live on this piece of land, right? Do we enjoy going where we're going and participating in the things we participate in? You know, this is why I argue against the current dispensation, but notwithstanding that, let's say South Africa was running the way a country should run, right? Do we want police? No, not us. If you're a solid citizen of a country, you definitely want the police. Because you don't want people who refuse to work stealing from you. If someone kills your mom or rapes your child, would you not want the police to come, investigate, arrest that individual, prosecute them, and then put them in prison? All right? Yes, you would. You would want justice. You would want the justice system to work. All right? But who must pay the justice system? Who must pay the policemen? Who must pay the prosecutors? Who must pay the prison wardens to look after that person that killed your family, to keep him away from someone else's family? What is your responsibility? You with me? It's a responsibility. We as citizens of this country have a responsibility to pay the government to look after us. It's our responsibility. Now, obviously, we're sitting in a different situation, yeah? But I'm pretty sure it's going to come right, especially the way the world is going now, all right? But we're not getting into that. I'm talking about responsibility. I'm not talking about the government's responsibility. They have their own responsibility. And yes, in many countries around the world, they're failing their people. But we have a responsibility. You have a responsibility. And how are you fulfilling your responsibility to the rest of us that have to live with you in this house that we call South Africa? You expect other people to fulfill their responsibility while you do not, yet you wish to reap the same rewards from the benefits of the country without taking responsibility for your portion within that. And that's a problem, you see? That's a problem. And that's why, just on a normal level, what you're doing and the way you're living and taking drugs is wrong. Because now when the police are supposed to be looking after me, who's working hard for a living and paying my tax and taking responsibility, they now have to run around making sure that you don't, or that you fulfill your responsibility. And if you fail to fulfill your responsibility, then they're going to put you somewhere, then I have to now become responsible for you. Because generally speaking, not everybody, but the vast majority of people that are engaged in that lifestyle don't work. Yet they require medical services, often at public hospitals. Now, who must pay for those people's medical issues? Everyone seems to think the government has got a big tree at the back of the union buildings where they just go pick 100 and 200 rand notes. The government must pay, the government must pay. Where is the government getting its money? No, they print it. That's what people think. They just print it and it's there. Now what happens when the government prints money for which they've got no backup from tax and gold and so on? Who's anyone here from Zim? Who else? Zim, right? What happened when Mugabe just printed money in Zim dollars? What happened to the money?
Changed to bearer checks and then it also had
But what happened to it? If you print money that you don't have support for in equity and assets, your money loses its value. You with me? That's why at one point in Zim, right? Not just Zim, there are South American countries as well. Iran now is in the same dilemma. Right? All right? If you print money for which you have no equity, it becomes valueless. So in Zim, they were paying at one point 2 billion Zim dollars for a loaf of bread. All right? Where they had to print 2 billion Zim dollar notes. Because it was literally a fact. After the Second World War, the same thing happened in Germany. The money lost its value. Because Germany had lost its equity. The money they were printing had no value in assets. You with me? Right? So the government hasn't got money. The only money the government has is the money that those that are taking responsibility for our country give to the government. And that's called tax. You with me? Right. Same with your life. If you don't start taking responsibility for your life, you are not going to fully enjoy the rewards of life. I like you saw, I left you on Friday, I got back yesterday. I took a long weekend break. Okay, I really desperately needed to take it, right? Okay, and I rode with some friends of mine. I rode 500 k's up to Louis Trichardt, right? And a mate of mine has got a hotel there and he gave me some free accommodation, but still, we had to pay for the food, we had to pay for the petrol, we had to pay for the coffees in between, we had to pay, some of us, for toll gates, we had to pay for all of that stuff, right? But my point got across. It was actually Kunrad, for those of you that want to know. Because on the way back, Kunrad paid for all these toll gates. Because I made my point valid. From a scriptural perspective, the Bible tells you the same thing. Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. In other words, while you are alive, you have to pay in financial terms for your right to live in a country. There's not a country in the world that doesn't work like that. If you go to China, you're going to pay to work in China and live in China. Much more than you're going to pay here. If you go to the USA, you'll pay less, but you'll still pay. You know? You're going to pay to live in a country. You think you're not paying now. You're already paying. With fuel, levies, VAT. That's why fuel keeps going up. VAT they want to keep pushing up because 60 to 70% of our population doesn't take responsibility for the right to live in their country. And so they have to find other avenues to bring that money in. Because people want to live off the welfare system and not contribute anything back to the society. It's a no-win game there. Because the people that are taking responsibility are going to go, why should I take responsibility here when I can go to another country, take responsibility there, and reap better rewards than what I'm reaping here? And those people will systematically move, and the people who only remain and don't take responsibility, what will happen to them? If no one's putting into the pot, take a pot of potjiekos or stew. For those of you, a better one would be, take a bucket of KFC hot wings, but if everybody keeps taking hot wings out the bucket and no one's putting hot wings in the bucket, what will happen? The bucket will get empty. And then you're going to have to rely upon someone else to go buy another bucket of hot wings. But do you ever buy a bucket of hot wings? No. You only take out the bucket because you think that that's okay if someone else continually buys the bucket of hot wings. Eventually, the person buying the hot wings is going to think, if I buy hot wings and I don't go back to those oaks, I'm going to have a whole bucket of hot wings to myself. You know that as an addict. How many times have you done drugs with oaks where you've bought the drugs, right? Repeatedly with the same oaks. And then eventually you get tired of buying the drugs. And then you tune the oak, okay, it's your turn to score. And then you don't see that oak ever again. And that turns out lacquer because now you've got more drugs for yourself. Anyone been down that road? So you understand the concept, right? Now, in order to take responsibility, this is the next word. You are going to have to sacrifice. And that's something you guys really struggle with. So in order for me to go on this lacquer 4 days away, what's my sacrifice? Being here all the time, even when I'm not here, because my house is right here. Even when we're on holiday, we're still here, because our phones don't stop ringing from this place. And that's the sacrifice we make, in order that we can help you, A, and B, in order that we can put food in our stomachs, and we can have a house to live in, and go on the odd excursion. That's the sacrifice. That I'm not out in the streets playing with my friends all day. I'm here teaching the way to a proper life so that you also understand that you, if you want to move forward in life, are going to have to make sacrifices. One of those sacrifices is you will have to. There's no way around it. Everybody's trying to win the lotto. What? How often have you played the lotto?
Never.
And how's it going? Have you won it?
No.
Because you can't win it if you don't play it, right? Okay? So he's out. He's never going to win the lotto. For those of you that do, I ask God the same question, let me win the lotto, let me win the lotto. And one day the Lord spoke to me and he said, I'm actually lying. And I don't want to do that. I know a guy. I read a story about a guy who said, please God, let me win the lotto, let me win the lotto. And eventually God said to him, listen, bro, at a bare minimum, buy a ticket. It speaks to a different mindset where people expect God to do everything. They don't want to do anything, right? But how often have you played the lotto, right? Some guys twice a week, some guys once a month, whatever it is, right? And how many times have you won? Over how many years? Not $5 to buy another 6 flippant numbers, but I'm talking about where you've won, where you've sat back and thought, all right, I can chill now for 6 months. I'm up. I'm properly up because of lotto. 0 people. But yet you'll go back there because you are hoping that the lotto is going to redeem you of your sacrifice, which everyone else is engaged in order to obtain the things that they have. Do you think a Ford Ranger falls out of the sky? What? That thing has to be paid every single month. What? And if you don't pay it, you don't take your responsibility through the sacrifice of going to work and putting up with here, walking with winners, whatever we put up with here and whatever we have to deal with here every day. That's the sacrifice we make so that we can afford to have a Ford Ranger. But if I don't continue with my responsibility to the bank, then I'm going to make another sacrifice. I'm going to sacrifice my Ford Ranger back to the bank. Do you ask now how repo works? You don't pay, they come take it back. Does that mean that's the end of it? You're going to end up making sacrifices now for a vehicle you don't have because the bank charges you money to lend you the money to buy the car. It's called interest. So if you buy a car for 500 grand, you're going to pay 750 to 800,000 rand back on that 500,000 rand car. Because the bank is charging you for the trust they give you. In other words, they take their money, their 500,000, they pay the dealership because on your papers you've given them information and they trust what you've told them is true. But in order for them to trust you, they charge you for that trust. With me? And if you don't fulfill that trust obligation, that responsibility, you will sacrifice your car, but you will also still pay back the money that they invested in you for that trust. In other words, let's take a Ranger now. A Ranger will cost you, depending where you buy it, second-hand, 750 to R1 million. They will come and take that car away, and they'll auction it for 300, 400 grand. Right? Which means the money that is still owed on the car, plus the interest on that money, is still for your account. For how long? For as long as they keep summonsing you. So if they summons you and you say, I'm unemployed, this and that and all the rest, they say, no problem. A couple of weeks later, months later, they summons you again. Then they start going into your bank accounts to check if you're earning money. Then they come to your house to see if you have a house and who owns the house. Then they come in your house, and if you've got things that they can sell to start paying that car, they take those things. That's called attaching your goods through a judgment order. And once you've got a judgment order, you can't buy anything on credit for at least 10 years. What's wrong? Oh, is there an intake? Ah, excellent. Another one bites the duster. Just think how much money I'm costing the Najis today. I think I must start charging you. I'm going to do this, I think. When I take my next intakes, first question I'm going to ask the intake is, how much money did you spend a day on drugs? Or alcohol, and cigarettes, and vapes? And then whatever that number is, I'll charge you per day. How's that for a plan? Some like says $2,000 a day. What? Hey? Yes, that'd be great, eh? I think that's fair. I know some of you tune, I only smoked 1 dacha pip every day. You must charge me 80 cents. That's how you got to rehab. It's just that 1 little dacha pip a day. Eh? Some of you have got me convinced that, you never took drugs. Your parents are trying to steal your fortune. Huh? That's why you came to this rehab, because you're so wealthy. Houghton House. Crescent Clinic. Westview. Elam. We don't want 3-course meals and buffets and Hey? Are you with me? That's pretty much where I wanted to go with this morning, is you've got to learn that you're going to have to make sacrifices in order that you can take responsibility for your life. And in order to take responsibility for your life, you have to start being honest with yourself, dude. And then I was going to go into this, and let me just quickly do it. I've got 5 minutes. I've got 5 minutes. You can push 5 minutes. 5 minutes to an hour. So, a pastor's 5 minutes. Because I've got to take back all the time that I was also talking rubbish to you. Okay? So, it's like this, right? This is a new year, guys. It's fresh. And this is how you should be looking at this new year. Not how much money you can make. Not how quickly you can get back to the cuck you were involved in before. Why don't you dedicate this new year to walking out of this place completely restored, completely new, and with a completely different mindset, ready to take on this new road that you're going to have to walk, this road of change, with energy, with vigor, with purpose, and with passion. Why don't you take this year to completely redefine yourself? Redefine your thought patterns, redefine your spirituality, because your thought patterns, unfortunately, I didn't make these rules. This is just the realities of the world we live in. Your thought patterns are 100% connected to your spiritual values, bro. And then you've got to start understanding why your thoughts are constantly taking you into decisions that are taking you the wrong way. It's because your spiritual condition is corrupt. And your spiritual condition is corrupt because the devil has convinced you. Now, if you don't like the word devil and you immediately see a little hot stuff with a fork, that's not the devil. Let's call it this: the way of the world. Evil has convinced you that you are not to be desired. And because you feel like you're not to be desired by anything, you feel like you have no purpose. You feel like an alien in your own body. And so you start trying to fill those gaps and holes in your spirituality with outside sources. And the chief outside source that you're using is the substance of your choice. But the reality is that you have to correct that internal spiritual dilemma in order that spirituality can start influencing your thought process. And through your spirituality influencing your thought process, you will start making better choices. You'll start believing in yourself. And once you start believing in yourself and you see that the correct choices are leading you down a positive space, you'll no longer fear this road. You'll be ready to take it on no matter what it throws at you. You with me? All right. Not even 5 minutes. Have a lekker day. And more of this tomorrow. And we're not charging extra for this. It's free. It's mahala.